Hi there, I'm nicodehaan, and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced and natural wild world.
To recover our mental health and regain our rights and freedoms, I'm Ellen DeHaan.
It's a beautiful day in Durango, Colorado. It is 28 degrees, a low of 10 tonight, and it's sunny out.
No snow.
Yeah, I know.
We have some snow on the ground, but it's kind of just frozen on the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
But boy, it was cold. Yesterday was what, 0 degrees when you got up?
Yeah, when I went for my walk, and when I went to jiu-jitsu, it was like -5 going down the hill.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's pretty cold.
It warms up pretty fast when the sun comes.
The sun is just great. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Odysee channel. Hit the follow button, hit the like button, help our channel grow. And we also post on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you hit the link below the show notes, you can maximize your nutrition with products from Mother Earth Labs. These are products that we use to supplement our diet. Check that out, please. When we look at mainstream news stories about anti-aging, natural health, history, climate, as well as our freedoms, and we do our own analysis. So the topics for today's show are in the show notes listed below in the description. If you have any comments or questions, you can, let's see, where's the right ticker? Yeah, reach me at nicodehaan@me.com. Mother Earth Labs, that's what we just talked about. And also hit that subscribe and getting used to this, but not too fast. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. If you have any comments or questions, you can also put them down into the comment section in YouTube or Odysee, and I'll get to those.
And below the show.
So we're going to start with our first topic. Well, the whole topic today is really the epidemic of disease and death because of our lifestyle, mainly diet, but also other lifestyle issues. So that's basically, and we're going to start with just some of the mainstream stuff. The first article is the modern food problem.
According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 3 Americans are obese. This means the average American is overfed. Yet most Americans, and in fact the whole world too, are suffering from macronutrient malnutrition. They have deficiencies, and they are missing things like vitamins and minerals. Not only are people malnourished, but a Gallup survey found that 1/3 of Americans don't exercise at all.
Yeah, without time to cook and prepare healthy and delicious meals, people end up either skipping meals, which leads to binging, or having a bag of chips or some other energy dense and nutrition poor foods, which they call EDNP. We always have to have our short form here. These are high calorie foods with a negligible amount of micronutrients. So these foods include soda pops, margarine, candies, pastries, ice cream, potato chips, sweetened coffee drinks, and many other commonly consumed edibles.
And apparently, according to this article, they've decided that people are not eating at home, and they've decided that the reason is cooking is a hassle. People don't like the mess of cooking. They don't have time. They don't know how to cook, or they view it as a chore. And even when they do cook, they find it hard to create delicious, healthy meals because they don't know how to. The average person knows how to make a total of 4 different recipes.
So what do they do instead?
They have a sandwich, they skip a meal, or they have EDNP foods like chips, donuts, or soda. The more people work, the less time they have for unpaid work like cooking, and this one really got me, taking care of their families. This article decides it's an unpaid job.
Well, not everybody's like us. We do a lot of cooking at home.
Oh, yeah.
We cook mainly breakfast and then dinner. We don't have lunch.
Right.
But we only go out to eat really twice a week. And once
we go once for dinner.
Right.
And once for lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just stuff that we do.
And really, it's a social thing more than anything else, because we meet friends for dinner on Wednesday nights, and we meet friends for lunch on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's really more of a social thing, and we do it for a couple of reasons. One, we always have organic, whole foods, and grass-fed beef and free-range chickens and all of that. So we know what we're eating.
Right.
and we prepare it in a way that's healthy as well. And the other reason is it's boy, eating out every night is going to run you $800 or more a week.
It's definitely going to be more expensive, right?
That's expensive.
And the quality of food, I think, is not as good unless you go someplace specific, like we go to our dinner place.
Seasons,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
they have locally sourced, grass-fed, organic foods that they
Yeah.
serve there. So
Yeah, makes a difference.
we know what we're eating.
It says here, even if they skip a meal, they might be stop going hungry for about a half an hour. But when they finally do have time to eat, they'll be craving these other types of foods, which are the salty, sugary, and fatty processed foods. And when they say fatty, they mean that not
bad
really
fats,
good. Yeah,
not
bad fats.
not the animal fats.
So these are things loaded with carbs, unhealthy fats like hydrogenated oils, and they come in.
And they've got unhealthy side effects.
Yeah, they promote inflammation in the body, and I think that's the main thing.
Because inflammation is really the source of all illness in the body.
Yeah.
So they call this, if you go down, the problem is the modern food problem. People simply can't cook, so they have to eat out. They crave the EDMP foods, and that's what they eat. And so it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And I think this is when we see a lot of people that I know, this is what is going on. Now, the next article is talking specifically about the processed food and how it affects your health.
Yeah, so just going to go through it.
So it starts by saying, just to the screen here, processed foods are generally thought to be inferior to unprocessed foods. The term may suggest that a packaged food item contains many ingredients, perhaps even artificial colors, flavors, and chemical additives. Others refer to as convenient or pre-prepared foods. Processed foods are suggested to contribute to obesity, epidemic, and the rising prevalence of chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes.
Type 2.
Type 2 diabetes mainly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it says, and of course, it's very hard to pin down a kind of a specific definition of what a processed food would be. And it says the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, defines a processed food as one that has undergone any changes to its natural state. That is, any raw agricultural commodity subjected to washing, cleaning, milling, cutting, chopping, heating, pasteurizing, blanching, cooking, canning, freezing, drying, dehydrating, mixing, packaging, or other procedures that alter the food from its natural state. And the food may include the addition of other ingredients such as preservatives, flavors, nutrients, and other food additives or substances approved for use in food products, such as the good old trio of salt, sugar, and bad fats.
Yeah, and the Institute of Food Technologies includes additional processing terms like storing, filtering, fermenting, extracting, concentrating, microwaving, and packaging.
So that's a very broad brush to lump everything together. So, for example, fermenting, yes, it's a process, but it also adds to the beneficial qualities of a lot of different kinds of food.
No doubt about it. Sure.
And it helps to preserve it without having to add a bunch of stuff to it.
Yeah, because food begins to deteriorate and lose nutrients as soon as it's harvested. Even the apples in a produce aisle undergo 4 or more processing steps before being sold to consumer. This is why, in practice, it's helpful to differentiate between the various degrees of food processing.
Don't forget, apples are getting trucked in across the country,
or
imported from South America, whatever. So it's not just a matter of pick the apple.
When you come to think of it, that apples are really not native to North America anyway, or even South America probably.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they were from the Arab
countries.
A
lot of things that came in are imported and or transferred from different countries.
Sure. And probably most of our meat that we eat, the sheep, I don't think sheep are
the type of cattle is different.
Cattle is different, yeah. So Yeah, we're not eating the same food our ancestors did, our ancient ancestors.
We're not
did.
even eating the same food the Europeans are eating, or
Right.
the Eastern countries are eating.
Yeah. So it talks about unprocessed or minimally processed foods.
It says unprocessed foods include the natural edible food parts of plants and animals. Minimally processed foods have been slightly altered so they can be more easily stored, prepared, and eaten. And this particular processing does not substantially change nutritional content of the food.
Right.
So
Examples include cleaning and removing inedible or unwanted parts, grinding, refrigeration, pasteurization, fermentation.
oh, now they've got fermentation here under the minimal.
Yeah, and freezing and vacuum packaging. This allows the food to be preserved over more time and remain safe to eat. One of the things I was thinking about when I was going through some of these articles was, just 100 years ago, we stored food differently because there was no refrigeration.
Right.
In fact, I remember in Holland that we had minimal refrigeration, only certain items that
Went in the refrigerator. Went in the ice
so
box.
we had a small box.
It was an ice box.
And there was
You
actually
put
ice in
it,
there.
right.
Too.
That's
So
exactly
I remember
right.
even moving to Canada, I remember the Iceman coming.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
things
And,
have changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's see. Then it talks about processed culinary ingredients. Now, this would be your condiments, your spices, your herbs,
Yeah.
the seasoning of the food.
Yeah.
And they're typically not eaten on their own, but are used to prepare other foods. So that would be oil from plants. It does say seeds, although we've been seeing an awful lot of material that says don't eat the seed oils.
Yeah,
but-
maybe the exception might be the sesame seeds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, vinegar made from acetic fermentation of wine, honey extracted from combs, syrup from maple trees, those kinds of things. And I'm sure that would include the salt, pepper, and the oregano and basil and sage and turmeric and
Yeah,
all of
just
those
basically
kinds of
condiments
things.
type
Yeah,
of
the
thing.
herbs and condiments.
Also says here that processed foods derive from either of the two previous groups, but have added salt, sugar, and or fat. Some canned fruits and vegetables, some cheeses, freshly made bread, and canned fish are examples of these.
Freshly made bread would be the commercial bread.
Yeah.
When you make it at home, it's not the same.
And then they have a category here of ultra processed foods. I think we know what all those things are, but these are foods that go under.
We go beyond the incorporation of salt, sugar, and fat to include artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, thickeners, emulsifiers, additional sweeteners that promote shelf stability. They preserve and enhance the texture. They increase the palatability. So in other words, they make it so that you enjoy eating it because it tastes so good, or it has such pleasing texture.
Especially the salt, the sugar, and the added.
Exactly. And they're often mass produced, low cost ingredients, which make them cheap to make and highly profitable to sell. It's speculated these foods are designed to specifically increase cravings so that people will overeat them and purchase more.
Yeah, I remember we talked a few weeks back, I think in December it was, that we talked about the cigarette companies because the cigarette industry was going through a collapse in a sense because of regulations, and that these scientists were now going over to the food industry to use the same method to use those cravings that we had in cigarettes.
Well, the people who are processing the food and selling the food saw that what they did to the cigarettes made them more addictive, and they thought, oh, let's see if that will work with food.
And it certainly has, no doubt about it.
That's right. And so the next question is processed food unhealthy? Well, I think that, again, it's a very broad brush, but it says there are pros. The pros are that it can be a time saver in the kitchen, and some of the processed and fortified foods provide important nutrients that are not otherwise obtainable in a busy household or one that has a limited food budget. From a nutritional standpoint, processed and even ultra-processed foods can provide key ingredients. What it comes down to is every time when they process all this stuff, they put vitamins and minerals back into it that they took out.
And some of the sources that I've read is that the quality of those ingredients are low on the totem pole of.
Right. It's not the same as eating a natural Yeah.
There are some cons, of course. That's mainly what we're interested in. Is, and you can go through this, and it's just
Well,
process.
again, nutrients are destroyed or removed,
Right.
and a lot of the fiber is removed when if they peel the skin off or whatever, and they take everything out of it and throw a bunch of artificial stuff back into it.
Yeah.
So.
And then they have a list here of decoding the ingredients on the food labels.
Yeah, now reading the label, we talk about reading the label a lot in our podcast, and it's important to take a look.
Yeah, if you want to really see what's in it, you got to read the label, and the less ingredients. We usually like to look at it. And if it's 3 to 5 ingredients, then you're way better off than if you've got that huge list, right?
Oh, it says, well, first of all, a lot of people have food allergies these days, and part of that is the environment and the toxicity of the food and so on. And, so you want to be looking at labels to make sure they're not sneaking something in that your body doesn't like.
Yeah, and of course, as a lot of people had said in the food industry who are criticizing the food industry, is that these problems that we have with tolerances to different kinds of food are the result of the bad food, the ultra processed food, and probably has to do with chemicals that are in the environment, as well as chemicals that are in our vaccines and other medications. And
well,
things like
in addition, the food is causing problems like insulin resistance and other digestive issues and so on. So but they do have a few things here that are pretty interesting and that you should know when you're looking at the labels.
Right.
The ingredients are listed in order of quantity. So the very first ingredient is going
quantity
to be
by weight.
Going to be the one that's the most prevalent in the food.
Yeah.
So if salt is the first ingredient, you got a very salty package.
Yeah, and that's why you look at those first 5 ingredients to see what's in most of that stuff. Right?
And then they go on to say some ingredients like sugar and salt may be listed by other names. For example, you'll see sugar and then you'll see corn syrup. Well, corn syrup is sugar. High fructose corn syrup is sugar.
Yeah, cane
honey,
sugar, coconut sugar, dextrose, malt syrups, molasses, all kinds of things.
turbinado sugar.
Yeah.
All of those are sugar. Yeah. And if you add them all together, they come up to a substantial portion of maybe what you're buying. Then they say sodium, of course, is salt, but that includes monosodium glutamate and disodium phosphate. Those are both salts. If the food's highly processed, they may have artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives.
Another thing, too, is all these different types of sugars and all these different types of salt are probably not as good for you as the original form of the sugar.
Plain old sugar that comes from the cane or the beet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And as we've discovered too, is that like xylitol, which comes from a birch tree, has been used by the native people for oral health and things like that. And we kind of switched over to using those products and found a lot of benefit.
Well, it's interesting. I made some brownies, and I make my brownies with almond flour, and I did half sugar and half xylitol. And it was an interesting, much creamier, fudgier texture to the brownies. They were delicious. They didn't taste any different.
Yeah, so maybe we'll try 100% or 75.
Well, I think make it too fudgy.
Maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, I use raw sugar. So. Then the preservatives include ascorbic acid, sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate is formaldehyde. It's in formaldehyde. Potassium sorbate and the tocopherols. Then the emulsifiers, they prevent the separation of liquid and solid. That would be your soy lecithin and your monoglycerides. Thickeners are the xanthan gum, pectin, carrageenan, and guar gum. And then the colors are the artificial FD&C, yellow number 6, or natural beta carotene to add yellow hues. And this morning's paper mentioned that red dye has now been banned from foods. We'll cover that next week.
Yeah, so fortified foods contain vitamins and minerals that have been added after processing, because a lot of the processing that they do before that
takes out
a lot of those things. And like I said before, these are not the quality vitamins and minerals. So they're putting the labels
They're
on
putting
these.
chemicals.
They're putting chemical
Mhm.
formulations of that. The bottom line here is that food processing has a broad spectrum that ranges from basic technology like freezing or milling to incorporating additives and all these things. Whoops, that may not be great.
Yeah. So there's evidence showing that association with certain types of food processing and poor health outcomes, especially low nutrient ultra processed foods that contain added sugars, excess sodium, and unhealthy fat. So not good. They do mention a number of things that, try some suggestions for maybe limiting your diet or being more mindful about it. It's an interesting article, so take a look at it when you
Yeah,
have a
so the
minute.
next article is talking about modern food items, how they're hurting us. And they go more into specific things, and we can kind of just skim over this when you look around, you can find different fast food restaurants and other types of restaurants that may be low quality.
Well,
And
they're
then,
serving you modern day canned and preserved food, and they most likely have had the food in the microwave or fried it in oil. And they've linked it all to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, strokes, kidney malfunction, among other things.
yeah.
And this was interesting. It said, have you ever imagined the reason for you being frustrated, exhausted, and stressed out all the time? The answer is simple. It's because of the unhealthy and poor quality food we eat in the name of modern day food. In addition, these food items can also result in food allergy and intolerance, which elevates your chances of further health worsening.
Yeah. Then it has a section here learning about the silent killers, and these are listed. Number one being the sugary beverages. Number two being frequently
Unhealthy fats.
uh, ordered junk food. Number three being the breakfast cereals. Number four being the little scoundrels called pastries, cookies, and cakes. Number five being white bread, the go-to poison we consume.
My goodness.
And then there's a little wrap up here. And there's a good sentence here that manufacturers manipulate the people by advertising it as completely refined wheat, which is a low fiber, and they're talking specifically about the white bread.
Mhm.
And just bread itself is not that great for you. I think if you consume it just, like we do, we have sourdough bread maybe once a week, a little bit with some oil.
Well, yeah, we do the sourdough bread because that's been fermented
Yeah.
and processed in a healthy way. We don't eat any other bread. Once in a blue moon, we might have a little something in a restaurant, but mostly we don't eat any
No,
other
it's
bread.
sourdough.
Sourdough,
That's the only
yeah.
thing I'm
Mhm.
consuming. They have a
Yeah.
little wrap up here.
Well, the point is that eating the bread is spiking the blood sugar.
Sure.
So
All these things are,
yeah,
because most of them,
and the carbs in general
Yeah.
are spiking your blood sugar and causing insulin problems.
yeah, and I think as we go into the next article, it's the spiking constantly of this that really adds to our unhealthy situation, our unhealthy lifestyle. So
Yeah.
you can read the little part.
It's the vital tips that they say at the end is wrapping up. Everyone loves to drink flavored water, but sometimes adding a slice of lemon to your water will be an excellent alternative. Instead of ordering from restaurants, make your meals at home with fresh items that you know where they came from and
Yep.
so on. Eating whole grain bread or Ezekiel bread. I have to look at Ezekiel bread. I don't even know what's in it.
It's just more of a primitive bread. So
Okay. Instead of buying flavored and sugared cereal, you must go for cereals that are high in fiber and low in sugar. And literally, we never eat cereal. To us, it's a carb that's empty calories and spikes your blood sugar.
Yeah.
And then eating yogurt with fresh fruit or dark chocolates can be an exciting change for desserts and pastries.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be lactose intolerant, then you can't eat.
Well, then they have certain alternatives now that we can use. So now we come to the crux of some of the solutions, and
well, it's very interesting. First of all, this article is from aginganddisease.org. It's extremely technical in many ways,
Yeah.
and it's very detailed, and it really explains quite a lot. But what it's talking about, and we've mentioned this before, is metabolic syndrome.
Yeah.
And that metabolic syndrome is now being seen as an emerging underlying factor for causing so much of this illness and disease and malfunctioning of the body.
Yeah.
And so it says, and and once again, we're dealing with somebody who pushed a theory and somehow it got adopted, sort of like the Ansel Keys with the fat, no good fat.
Yeah. So this is, and this happened during the 19th century. So the late 1800s was Louis Pasteur and
Antoine Béchamp.
Béchamp.
Mhm.
They engaged in a debate about the origin of infectious disease, and Pasteur championed the germ theory, or it was a disease-centric theory that emphasized pathogens such as bacteria and viruses as the origin of disease. Pathogens had to be targeted and then eliminated to clear the disease.
Béchamp, on the other hand, advocated terrain theory, also known as host theory, which is a health-centric theory that recognized that most pathogens are scavengers capable of instigating disease only in a weakened host.
Yeah, terrain theory emphasizes a dysfunction in the body's own tissues and cells as the origin of disease, implicating a disease target that needs to be restored, which in turn improve the body's health and resistance to infections. In other words, the body heals itself and not the drugs that you're targeting.
Well, that was the thing. It was basically at that time in the 19th century, they weren't really able to identify a suitable restorative target, which resulted in vague mechanistic explanations and treatment recommendations. So the germ theory disease-centric paradigm has expanded to become the conceptual framework applied to most disorders encountered in our modern healthcare systems, including non-infectious lifestyle disorders, which dominate the leading cause of death in the West today.
Yeah, and this is where we I think it was around the year 2000 that we started becoming acquainted with the terrain theory. I think Paige, who was on the show real early, when I first started living in a primal lifestyle on the Tiger Financial News Network in St. Petersburg. And she brought this to light for us, Paige Clark. And it changed my whole theory of how I'm going to heal myself and what I'm going to do when something affects me. And ever since we used that strategy, we've had less and less time of feeling disease and feeling ill, being less at ease, let's say. That's what disease means.
Out of ease.
Out of ease.
Yeah. Out of wellness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has really shaped our lives from like 24 years ago till now. Maybe it wasn't 24 years ago, but it was about at least 20 years ago that we started thinking this way.
It's funny, when you make a major change in your life, you don't write down exactly what date it was. And then somewhere down the road, you go, wow,
I've been doing this all my life.
This.
That's right. Yeah. But it's really enhanced the way we look at things and the way we feel. And, we've made adjustments like our diet. We were still eating the normal American diet.
Vegetables.
We were eating cereals in the morning for a while.
Yeah.
And then we slowly started looking at the particular things like we talked about in these other articles about the cereals and the sugary drinks, soda pops, and all these things that when we started eliminating them, we noticed slight differences. And we always major differences in the whole scope of things, for sure. And one of the major differences is that we don't get the colds and the flus and the seasonal types of things. We do get them once in a while.
Once every, let's see, it was 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago I had the flu.
Yeah, and then
when I first started at my at the smaller firm at Wellington Hamilton.
Yeah.
It was like new germs that I wasn't immune to with all the people in the office. And so it hit me for a couple of days. But
and here we had just this last December.
Yeah, we got a flu
of some kind.
Yeah,
we don't know what it was, but
it was a respiratory flu.
Yeah, and it was not pleasant.
No, but it was so unusual that it was really annoying.
Yeah. Sure. And I had to miss the jujitsu for a week.
Yeah,
Right?
it was
Two-
really, it
two
was
sessions.
really knocked us on our butts.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but we're fine now, and we weren't terribly sick. We just felt enervated. We didn't have any energy. We
Yeah.
couldn't, and there was a lot of coughing involved.
Yeah. So the disease-centric paradigm regards each of the disorders as a disease process itself, caused and driven by pathogenic targets that must be suppressed or eliminated, typically with drugs. The metabolic syndrome, for example, is regarded as a constellation of disease markers caused by glucose intolerance and insulin resistance. So blood glucose levels and insulin resistance are targeted.
Yeah, by the drug that you're given.
Yeah, normally.
Atherosclerosis is regarded as a disease primarily caused by high blood LDL cholesterol. So cholesterol is targeted. Now this is being disproven that cholesterol is completely unrelated to the plaque in your system.
And it's still not in the mainstream.
No, but we're hearing it a lot more.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
A lot more.
And then cancer is regarded as a disease caused by the nuclear mutations. So the mutations are targeted. So you can see that none of the cause of this whatever's happening in your body is not targeted at all. It's just the symptoms are
They're
targeted.
dealing with, yeah, they're
kind of like
treating
when you have a headache, you're going to take an aspirin so you get rid of the headache. But why did you get the headache? And stop doing that. Right. Whatever caused that headache.
What was it? The man who was banging his head against the wall, and somebody said to him, "Why are you banging your head against the wall?" And he said, "It feels so good when I stop." Whoa. And then they mention neurodegeneration, and boy, dementia of all kinds, and Alzheimer's disease have been just become really epidemic.
So you can see a pattern here just from looking at those three things. The cholesterol thing, which is clogging up your arteries.
So they say.
So they say. Well,
which is now being shown.
Well, it's not the cholesterol that's doing that.
Right.
Okay. And then when they have the
atherosclerosis,
which is
they say it's from cholesterol.
Yeah. They say that's from cholesterol, and they have cancer, which shows up. And most of this stuff is because of different types of food and
lack of exercise and obesity and poor circulation.
Yeah, but poor circulation is like that. The neurodegeneration disease is, your circuits are being constricted. So the senses are not going through.
They say it's caused by abnormal protein aggregates, clumping of
the clumping of the proteins.
Yeah, so they do blood thinners and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, so your blood can go through those narrow passages.
Right, instead of treating the passages.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so that's what's going on.
So they say, and they say that there's prodigious funding and a multitude of drugs. But the disease-centric paradigm has not halted the rise of any of these disorders. And in fact, I'd say there's a lot more of them than there used to be.
Well, it certainly has. Yeah. Despite the prodigious funding and a multitude of drugs, the disease-centric paradigm has not halted the rise of these disorders. Rather, investing further into this approach, perhaps we should reconsider the paradigm. And that's that terrain theory. So they mention here a transition in dietary lifestyle. This was a result in, I think, either New Zealand or Australia, where they took a group of people. It wasn't a real large group, but I think it was like under 100 people. And they gave like 24 of this diet, 24 another diet, and 24 placebo. So maybe 72 or so, whatever it was. And then what happened was after a 12-week period, they took each one and gave them a different. So the ones that were on the
switched them around.
They switched around the diets. So and what the diet was, the primary diet they were investigating was that low carb diet. So they could get people to have ketones. so they could be living off the ketones. Then the other one had the standard American diet, and the other ones had a placebo type of diet where they didn't change really anything. They kind of disguised it. So then group 1 moved to group 2, group 2 moved to group 3, and group 3 moved to. So you have 3 transitions over a year's period. So it was a 12-week, a 3-month period, I think. So it was almost a year. And then they kept track of what was going on here. And the findings were, pretty astounding, even though it was a short period of time. Because a lot of these things they mention in here take a long time to transition into fat burning from a sugar or sucrose burning lifestyle. Your body doesn't switch over immediately.
Not quickly.
So they didn't see that first month, or in some cases, the first 2 months, they didn't see a lot of differences. But then it was in the last month that they saw primary differences.
Okay, so they start with the hunter-gatherer dietary lifestyle.
Yes.
And they say, metabolically, the hunter-gatherer dietary lifestyle fostered a balanced oscillation between 2 states: anabolism, which emphasizes growth and replication, and catabolism, which emphasizes maintenance and repair. Hunter-gatherer meals consisted of wild animal and plant products, ranging from primarily carnivorous to largely vegetarian, depending on where they were living and what time of year it was, leading to a digestible carbohydrate load that was either very low or, if high, accompanied by ample fiber, which slowed carbohydrate absorption and was fermented by the colon bacteria to generate short-term fatty acids for the epithelial cells.
Right.
And then they mentioned number 2 was the modern dietary lifestyle, which we've been talking about.
Right.
And then they talk number 3 is mitochondrial dysfunction.
A singular disease. Seen from an evolutionary and health-centric perspective, the primary factor driving mitochondria dysfunction today is the modern dietary lifestyle, which induces excessive anabolic and suppresses catabolism, exposing mitochondria to excessive oxidative stress and insufficient renewal processes.
Yeah, so remember anabolism was
it's a state where your body's is getting nutrients and digesting good forms, and your body's healing from those things. And then the
catabolism.
Yeah, that is a state where we're repairing. So your body at rest. You may be fasting for 6 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, doesn't really matter. But your body's not digesting. So when it's not digesting and taking in nutrients, it can start its repair. But it can't do both. That's the interesting thing. Right, at the same time. So if you're thinking about this modern diet that we're all on, that emphasizes 3 meals a day plus snacking in between, your body never gets to that rest period where it's going to be repairing things. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah. 3.2 talks about metabolic syndrome. It talks about the 5 markers of metabolic syndrome: high fasting blood glucose, high blood triglycerides, low blood high density lipoprotein, which is HDL, abdominal obesity, and hypertension. And then emerging markers of the syndrome are now including non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And
that's a high ratio of small, dense to large, buoyant, low density lipoproteins particles. Yeah. So those are those LDLs, which are small.
Hopefully in a couple of months, we'll have a nice article about what's really going on with cholesterol, and we'll be able to tell you guys all about it.
Well, I think we know a lot now.
We do, but I think it would be helpful to have it all in one place. Atherosclerosis is the accumulation of oxidized LDL cholesterol, inflammatory cells, and cell debris. And I think it's actually, it's not so much the oxidized LDL cholesterol that is the inflammation of the cell debris that's not being removed and excreted from the body.
Yeah.
And it says,
the main thing to blame for these things are those oils that come from seed. So soy oil So these modern oils that really oxidize in the blood, and that's what's causing the problem.
And then it talks about cancer and neurodegeneration in more detail. And then number 4 is metabolic strategies restoring mitochondria function.
Let me get to that.
Yep.
In a second.
Okay. And it says, seen from a health-centric perspective, metabolic strategies are aiming to restore mitochondria function by dampening anabolism and rekindling the catabolic processes, which reduces mitochondria exposure to oxidative stress and enhances the renewal of the mitochondria pool, mitigating the underlying, number 4, down past cancer.
Okay.
Let's see. And they talk about a variety of metabolic strategies, including fasting. Now I'm at 4.1.
All right. Catching up.
All right.
Yeah, so fasting can be anywhere from 12 to 48 hours. It actually can be less too, but if like we eat usually at 3 or 4 o'clock, unless Wednesday we go out, so we eat at 5. But even from 5 till 5 in the morning, that's a 12-hour period.
Oh, and we don't usually eat breakfast till around 8.
Yeah, right.
So it's more than 12 hours.
Yeah.
That's called intermittent fasting. And then they have periodic fasting, which is full days of fasting.
Right.
And so they talk about that. Many human interventional studies have shown that fasting improves hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, and virtually all markers of the metabolic syndrome. And, realistically, we're not hungry.
Well, that's because we're have ketones flowing.
I know. I'm saying because of the lifestyle, because of the way we eat, and the way
being hungry is not a natural state for human beings. And when we are
not being hungry in terms of an hour from the time you eat, you're suddenly hungry.
But
that's not natural,
right? And even in the morning, we're not
no,
we
don't.
And even if we travel and we go, hours and hours on the road, and remember years ago when we were traveling, I used to get very, very nasty, hangry, because I was hungry and my blood sugar was spiking up, and I just needed food. Yeah, so now that never happens anymore. I can go a whole day and I say, yeah, I'm hungry, but I don't need to eat. Yeah, I could eat. So it's a whole different feeling. And once you get that feeling, it really clicks in your brain saying, this is the way we're meant to be.
All right, find 4.2.
4.2.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in this article. Take a look at it. Okay, then we've got carbohydrate-restricted diets. Those diets limit the daily intake of digestible carbohydrates, which is then replaced with one or more of basically good fat, protein, or fiber. And they say ideally the fat.
Right.
And
that's the big thing right there.
And that's why I highlighted it.
Yeah, many human interventional studies have shown carbohydrate-restricted diets improve all of these things that we're talking about.
Especially related to insulin.
Yeah, all the markers of the metabolic syndrome, every single one of them. So it really is the answer. We have anything else? We have a couple of things talking about integrating.
They say that part of the problem is that words are used, bandied about, but people aren't specific, and they don't necessarily mean the same thing when they're talking about, for example, the word fasting.
Right.
And but they talk about that, and they say,
well, another thing too that comes to mind, and what they mention in here is that there is no education process with the medical community. Right. In other words, when you go to the hospital or you visit your doctor, nobody's talking about diet. Well, they may be talking about what did you eat specifically that causes the distress, but they're not saying, here is what we would recommend.
And they have a dietitian at the hospital who isn't looking at nutrition, is rather looking, do you have any allergies? And what can we feed you while you're lying in the bed there?
I remember how these people are educated. They're educated by the drug companies. They're educated by the educational system that gets most of their money now
The
from
internet, the YouTube
well,
video.
I mean, actually, we get a lot of our information now from YouTube and
Yeah.
things like that because people are talking
But
about these things.
I'm not practicing medicine based upon
No,
what I
no, but
learned on
the
YouTube.
medical community is getting most of their education from these schools that are being funded by the drug companies and by the food industry. And same with the representatives, the drug representatives that come into the doctors. Remember, most of the doctors are saying, here is a problem, and this is the drug for that problem.
Right.
Nothing about the diet at all.
Right.
And yeah, they're saying you should be exercising.
No, and not really.
Well, maybe not.
Some people are. Some
Yeah,
people
well,
are.
we don't go to doctors, so
Right, not anymore.
we don't
right.
notice it too much anymore.
And so they point out one thing. The first thing, when you're interpreting the evidence, they're saying that again, correlation is not the same thing as causation.
Right.
If it occurs at the same time, it could be a coincidence.
Yeah.
Or it could just be part of the whole process, but it's not necessarily the cause.
Right.
And they're not separating that. The financial incentives.
Yeah, here we
And
go.
here we go.
Yeah, many clinical trials are funded by drug companies and or conducted by financially conflicted investors, which is
investigators,
which is problematic, as both practices are associated with favorable outcomes.
In other words, we're paying for this, so we're paying you to find us a good outcome.
Yeah, the good outcome is financial.
We make more money.
That's right.
That's it. And then it says clinicians taking part in establishing clinical guidelines are often funded by drug companies. Again, a conflict of interest.
Yeah, and third, perhaps the most insidious obstacle is the mutual beneficial financial incentive that exists between food and drug industries, which with the former promoting food products high in processed carbohydrates, which drives the lifestyle disorders, and the latter promoting drugs that purport to treat disorders.
Let's make a disease and then we'll give you a drug for it.
Yeah, it prevents the patients from recognizing the true problem and altering their food patterns.
Consumption patterns. There's no training or education in metabolic strategies. Right. And it's just, people are floundering and kind of hit or miss or whatever. And then, of course, there's always the problem of the patient not following the diet.
Well, that too, sure.
It's just, it's hard. So we have the conclusion is that today's paradigm of disease and health has long lasting repercussions for humanity throughout the remainder of the 21st century. And our current disease-centric paradigm regards the lifestyle disorders as distinct disease processes caused and driven by specific disease targets that then will be suppressed or eliminated, leading to the development of numerous drugs, which in fact have not halted the rise of the disorders at all.
Yeah.
So it's they're just saying, we need to make a change. We need to make a shift, paradigm shift. And
preliminary studies have also indicated the potential benefits in these diseases. And given the existing evidence combined with the ongoing pandemic of disability and death arising from lifestyle disorders, integrating metabolic strategies into a modern healthcare system should be identified as a global health priority. And maybe that's what we're going to find with this new...
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Whatever it is, if it gets the conversation going, it's all good.
Yeah, and I think if you start investigating this, and one of the things I want to mention too is that when we started changing our food, we found that our food cost really didn't change a lot.
Yeah.
We're eating a lot less. We don't have the snacks and things like that. And we're buying more expensive cuts of meat and better condiments. And we want to make sure the sources are right, but we're having a lot less of it.
Yeah, the cuts of meat are so rich and tasty that they satisfy you with this much smaller
now
portion.
we get a 12-ounce ounce ribeye that we ate last night, and I slice it up, and we didn't quite finish it.
It was a nice.
Yeah, we have 3 or 4 slices left.
Right.
So we're finding that we're eating a lot less, feeling a lot better. Of course, the health costs that come afterwards are
Are
much,
very
much lower.
expensive.
Yeah, so they're much, much lower, if any of them at all, because we don't see a
Yeah, we
doctor
don't.
on a regular basis. You do more than I because of
My skin cancer.
skin cancer, and just females seem to go to the doctor more.
Yeah, but at this point, when I'm 78 years old, I'm
It's not the same
not
anymore.
running to the, and I've had a hysterectomy, so
Yeah,
not
yeah.
running to the doctor.
So, investigate these things, especially that last article has a lot of detail in there. And maybe if you start changing some of the things, if you're not doing what we're doing, start looking into these strategies. I think you'll be feeling a whole lot better.
You have to craft a plan that works for you.
Yeah.
And but being more aware of what you're eating, and the fact that the food is directly related to all of these different kinds of diseases and syndromes and chronic illness and debilitation. I mean, I'm not worried about how long I live. I'm worried more about the quality of my life while I'm
Yeah, we want to die healthy.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good looking corpse.
That'd be nice. But going into our 80s now, I just turned 80. You're 78 years old. We want to see the next 20 or 30 years being healthy, being active, and just having a great time. This is a good time of our lives. And we see a lot of our friends are already gone. And they were gone in their 60s, 70s.
That you knew in your 20s and 30s and 40s. And
yeah, and they're not here anymore.
But their lifestyle was such that when we look back on it, we say, wow, it definitely took a toll.
We think so. Yeah. And now we have younger friends. So that's nice too. So anyway, that's our show.
We're seeking out younger friends.
Yeah, we sure
so
are.
they don't die.
Yeah. And it's kind of nice. We have friends that are in their 30s,
20s, 30s,
yeah.
40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah, which is unusual. I don't think my grandparents had that.
No.
They had their family though.
They had the family.
Yeah, so that's nice. Anyway, that's the show for today. Hope you got something out of it, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe, guys.
Yeah, please do.
Be well.
Bye-bye now.